Welcome back to Market on Close. I'm Oliver Rennick. Equity is trying to make some upside momentum into the final 20 minutes of the trading session, but it's still leaving most of the equity market underwater, at least in the red today. I want to bring in Scott Bauer as we branch out from stocks for a moment. Scott, let's talk about how we began this day. It was kind of geopolitical driven, and then it quickly turned into an oil story. What for you stands out in this market today?
The news really that we got, EIA, there's now a 6.8 million buildup instead of a 2.4 drop. They've been wrong, or this number has been wrong for, I can't even, remember how long it's been. So this oil market is just all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's going to take some geopolitical event right now to see this thing back up around 70. It's unbelievable to me that we're down at 64 here, given all of the pressures that we're seeing with Turkey and everything else. I honestly, I can't believe it, Oliver. We sat here, we talked about this. We were approaching 70, and I said, all right, there's a put in the marketplace here around 67 and a half, 68. Boy, was I wrong. Thank God I covered. That being said, why don't we get lower prices at the pump? Where is that? I want $2 a gallon gasoline. It's not happening.
Well, you got to get those refiners into the game. Scott,
yeah, that's
when
true.
you come back to the EIA for a sec, I want to explore what you mean by this when you say that it's been wrong before, because when I saw this print today, the first thing I thought of was when we had a massive 11 million barrel draw that was like one of the biggest in decades that took everyone totally by surprise. So there's clearly volatility here. Do you mean that it's been a poor indicator for the market or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean the expectations, the forecasts. Excuse me, let me clarify that.
I see.
The forecasts have been just, as wrong as they could be, almost like calling what the weather is here in Chicago on a daily basis. Totally wrong. So we've seen these volatile adjustments to the marketplace, like you just said, on every one of these reports going back probably the last 4 or 5 months.
All right. So let's talk here, Scott, about what's going on for the actual energy sort of companies, and then I want to get to Bitcoin in a sec. Energy companies are getting rocked, and we've seen their earnings now basically kind of showing us that that midstream problem is the real deal. Should we be surprised by a build given that if the stuff is not getting out to where it needs to be?
Probably not, which to me, the surprise is more in what the forecast was to what the actual numbers are. So no, it's really not surprising. And I don't know how long this is going to last. Is it going to last another 2 months? Is it going to last through the end of the year? If things, pressure comes off from the Turkey situation, is that going to, change things around? Or is it going to take some, pedal to the metal on Iran and bumping up sanctions against them to get this space to turn around? But right now, there is an awful lot of pressure. I would say, though, with the drop that I saw today after this number came out, I don't want to say we're at capitulation yet, which we've talked about, but that volume that I saw today, that's pretty darn close to it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk crypto here for a sec. Scott, let's talk Bitcoin. If we see it move back to the upside, is this just another trap for those trying to count on a rally back? What's going on as far as you see?
Well, let's go back to January when everybody was on the hype, and the whole crypto space had a value of almost $1 billion, about $830 million. Greater than the likes of Apple at the time, Microsoft, Google, everyone. Now, just yesterday, the entire space, the value dipped below 200 million. That being said, it's the altcoins that are really taking it on the chin. And I know you had mentioned something before about that. Bitcoin dominance is now back over 50% in the marketplace for the first time in a really, really long time. Is it a trap? You know what? We still don't have enough data. We still don't have enough historical data to really look at technical indicators. Yes, we can say that, Bitcoin has to hold the 58 or 5,900 area for there to be support, but we don't really know. What is it going on? Was the whole rise up to 8,500 all based off people hoping and praying that the ETF was going to get passed, and now that's the sell-off? That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, agreed there too. So hard to try and tie it to a catalyst like that, especially when you look at that intraday and it didn't really tell a big story for that. It didn't really tell a clear story on the ICE move for BACT either. So the one thing here, Scott, that you bring up I think is super important, because I see this a lot as the prices start to drop, and it's, well, if you're in a year ago, it's higher, or we've seen dips like this before, it's many times.
Right,
to your point there, the seasonality, the historic, in my eyes, nothing basically before November is usable because of the amount of adoption and worldwide recognition that happened. It's like being a private company versus a public one. The market structure is entirely different.
And it's a totally different product now than it was a year ago or back in November. So you're right, we can't really use that data, at least I can't, to predict any sort of resistance, any sort of support, or quite frankly, any rhyme or reason why this moves 10% a day. One interesting point that I did find in scourging the internet for some news on what was going on was specific to Ethereum and the major drop that we've seen in Ethereum when this was like one of the most beloved, blockchain and out there in quite a while, is that what I saw was a lot of these cash-strapped ICOs that are really having problems were selling Ethereum specifically to raise money for some of these cash-strapped ICOs. I don't know that that's the gospel. That's just something that I found that I thought was really interesting, because when you look at it, Ethereum is really not considered an altcoin, right? It's Bitcoin, it's Ethereum, maybe Bitcoin Cash, but the altcoins, Ethereum led the way in the drop of all of these altcoins. Even your Dogecoin didn't go down as much as Ethereum did.
You're right, Scott. You know how I know? Because I search DOGE almost a daily basis. Last point, Mr. Bauer, within this is that, are you as interested in watching the correlations as I am? Because what I also thought yesterday was interesting is that it broke off a little bit, right? There was a huge 10, 20% drop and all this type of stuff. Bitcoin just kind of went to 6 where it's been before and it bounced back up. Now, not to make heads or tails of that, but to your point about the market cap dominance of Bitcoin, doesn't mean it can't go down when the rest of the stuff gets washed out. But to see that break apart a little bit, I think has got to be the most interesting tell at this point of what happens.
Absolutely, and what that goes to tell everybody is that Bitcoin really is not just best in class, but if you want to label it as the safe haven or the safe crypto, Bitcoin really is, and that's why we're seeing that dominance right now, over 50% of the entire crypto space.
All right, careful throwing that word safe out there, Scott. All right, pleasure as always, Mr. Bauer. Great stuff. Thanks a lot, Scott. Mr. Bauer joining us from Prosper Trading Academy. Always great conversation. All right, Bitcoin up today, 6.7%, but it moves by the moment. Got to be careful with those lower thirds. All right, up next, volatility, some eco data, tons of different narratives about why the market's down. Go to a news site, you're going to get a different narrative. Not here, though. We're going to talk about all the different things that are coming together and telling stories of strength and telling stories of weakness. Stick around for the Market Closes panel in just a moment.